I think, like, for instance, hyperspectral imagery will come on the market faster than the other sources thanks to AI, because it helps a lot to understand what information you can extract from it. And then it will remain still that, I would say, cultural thing that needs to be still handled or managed by a human to really understand, oh, okay, you have that result, but now you have to understand how you can interpret it. And this is probably next step.
Hey, SpaceWatchers, and welcome to our Space Café Radio. We have today a very special episode as we are doing the recording at the St. Louis airport after the successful GEO end. Super exciting. And my guest today is the manager at Nova Space. Sylvain, how are you doing?
Good. Yeah, excited.
So we have been the last 4 days at the GEO end. So give me your first impressions from that event.
I think it has been a really interesting edition because despite, I would say, governmental context, especially here in the US, it has been a really good opportunity to industrial players to demonstrate their resilience and to develop more partnerships and to try new, I would say, a more diversified business expansion worldwide. So it has been interesting. And from a governmental side, we have still USGIF, I think, made a very great edition and a very interesting speakers who gave us also key insight regarding the evolution, especially I think about the budget cut announced from the US government for commercial imagery. That definitely will be something to look at in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you point out to this. One of the impressions our team from this edition was talking with the companies on the floor, and we talk about 254 exhibitors, so it was quite a number. But a number of them told us that they're exhibiting here just to show that they still exist, despite the budget cut and the uncertainty of the future. So that was an interesting observation, but is for European a very unknown one, I would say. I'm not sure, but at least it's an observation.
I think the government spending always been very major in the Earth observation sector, and in certain way it helped to the industry to develop their capabilities and to secure from long-term perspective their business plan. Now that some evolutions happen, there are, I would say, two main solutions. Either they are going to, the ecosystem will go through a consolidation era, or they have to find new revenues or new ways to commercialize imagery and services. And for instance, we started the joint symposium with the forward on wildfires monitoring. And it has been really interesting to see that they have some money to work on this, and they have really some critical use cases where commercial imagery may have an impact. We have seen on stage people from Earth Fire Alliance with Million Space as manufacturer, but also ISI, who is providing satellite solutions to tackle such, I would say, growing environmental related concerns as climate change. And so I think, being on GEOINT Symposium is, of course, because it's GEOINT, is government oriented, but on the same time, without that governmental budget and financing and support, they will have to find new ways to develop themselves. So maybe that's back, and that support, that important support from governments was also something slowing down the development of new businesses and new use cases.
It's interesting that you mentioned the wildfire experience, and we had a great conversation with Chris Anthony thereafter. But I thought afterwards, following your line of thought, is we're talking about infrared solutions here. So, but infrared is something that can be used for wildfire or for missile launches. So the question is, what comes first? It's a chicken eggs thing. We are trying, and that's what the market is showing us, to find more and more commercial applications for satellite imagery. But before diving into that, I want to pick your brain as an expert in this field. You run a panel as Nova Space at the event, and it was a panel on speed, and it was titled GEO and Always a Matter of Time, with Black Skies, Lynn Chassange, AWS, Phil Cooper, Unseen Labs, Clément Gallic, and Unibab, Johan Amen. What have been your takeaways in this very particular topic?
So first, I think the title was thought provocative because I think
be catchy.
Yeah, but because I think that is one of the first takeaway is no, it's not always a matter of time. So it is definitely something driving new business model and new markets. And that's the reason why people or from companies like Black Sky or Until Labs have designed their full acquisition chain, from the acquisition to the delivery in a way to deliver insight as faster as possible. But in the meantime, they also said that was not always the case from clients. And we have to keep in mind that user requirements must be like the central point and the way you define your different services. So that was on the key takeaway. Then second one, because it is critical for many applications. I think one of that sentence that really I remember is the one from Phil Cooper regarding saying that the timeliness was now as important as the resolution and was like one of the main driver also in the market.
You had this wonderful conversation about what is near time or near real time, where there is no definition for that. But what is a realistic experience that a client can have today on the security or defense side to get his imagery? I would say 90 minutes, 30 minutes. It's a normal thing for this, but are we faster?
What do you mean by are we faster? Faster like...
What can a client expect today?
I think what you said is already really fast from acquisition, because you have to get like the satellite at the right place at the right moment to make the acquisition and then delivering it in less than 30 minutes. It's something that is possible now thanks to many different technical enablers. First, the having mid-latitude ground segments and antennas that have been helpful first. Secondly, of course...
What about relay satellites?
I think would be something really complementary. I think data relay will be even more important. They will also integrate more security components. Recently announced with IonQ, that would be definitely a game changer, especially because we are integrating more and more AI all along the chain for facilitate the operation, for facilitate the acquisition and optimize the acquisition plan, but also then to make the processing faster and so on. But at the end, what the client wants is a response that is trustable. And for that, there is first AI training. Depending on the way you train your AI will be something providing really good insight or not at all, first. And secondly, make sure that there is no, that you can guarantee the integrity of your data and the acquisition and the information that you can extract from this. And in a world which is more and more complex, politically speaking, it is something that will become really critical in the coming years.
I'm happy that you mentioned AI because it's on my list here as well at one point. When you talked about AI, is it AI on the edge side, what Johan mentioned, or is it AI more in the interpretation of the data? Because what I recognized this year compared to the last year where AI was on the screen already, but there's a reluctance in this community to use AI for the reasons you mentioned. Can I trust the data? Can I trust the results? Can I trust the resolution? Can I trust also the guidance that comes from the data, especially when we talk about targeting?
I will give you an example that is not at all from space, but did you try the first editions of OpenAI software compared to the current ones? Now, for every request that you do, they are providing the list of sources about what they say and what they use to consolidate the response and so on. This is just a very quick example on the way you can provide trust, and then it's up to you to decide if you trust it enough to use it or not. But from the past edition, they were just giving first many wrong answers, much more than today, and secondly, without any source. So you didn't know from where the data was coming and the information was coming.
That's on the text side. If we talk about imagery and you're trying to analyze what's going on here, so I think the source thing is hard to bring in or not. We had this really absolute outstanding, and we mentioned a few times in our recaps, outstanding presentation of Catherine Mulligan from OpenAI, who really does these live experiments with imagery and, hey, where is that? What is that? And that was very interesting to see. Here, you don't have this research background that we mentioned before. So is it applicable for the AI or the geo-in community? Their concerns were absolutely correct in the past.
Yeah, we're talking about two different things. First, if it is like satellite imagery itself, I think is making sure that you can guarantee the integrity. So saying that, meaning doing encryption that cannot be hit by any other third parties, I would say. So between the acquisition and the delivery to the client, that will then make a decision based on that. On the other side is the trust that you can put on the tools that you use to, I would say, transform that information, that data into information that, contextually speaking, can be very differently interpreted from a situation to another. I've experienced a interesting workshop in London, and it was last year, regarding the importance of the culture when you do analysis and interpretation of a satellite imagery, because you need to really understand what is going on. And this is so different from a country than another. That's why NGA are always trying to hire people from different culture or bringing different culture aspects to their team to make sure that they can have a very global picture of what is going on in satellite imagery. It was like a very quick example, but just taking the example of extracting buildings from a satellite imagery, for instance. The issue they had a couple of years ago is they were training their algorithm on the batch of satellite imagery they had on a specific region, which was North America. But if you do building extraction from an imagery in New York, and if you do that in Lagos, for instance, it would be like completely different. Like the algorithm will not find anything that is coherent, and they will have like very strong issues to deliver something qualitative enough. So it's a quick example where culture is a very limited aspect, because you don't need to get some people from Nigeria to understand how it works. But it is just something that I can show you as illustration of the importance of the human intervention into the loop. So that's why.
As you mentioned NGA, Frank Wisworth, the director of NGA, he made a big stand on AI and GUAI and Maven and whatever these huge projects are. And it was impressive when he talked about his storage, the data that's there, 290 petabyte. That's a lot.
And this is why the AI is important, because they have so many data that they need to facilitate the work of their analysts. It's not that they are just doing everything automatically. It's not like something that can be handled by their teams.
We are in the topic of the changing role of Earth observation. If you take it together, AI and Earth observation, electro-optical, hyperspectral, SAR, RF, what is the near-term future that you see as an expert? So what can we expect the next 2 to 5 years before we then talk about quantum sensing?
That's a good question. I would say that I really see AI as a facilitator. Saying that, meaning that they will have to process imagery or the different type of sources easier than before. Saying that, it has always been the main limitation in Earth observation was the level of awareness of people and the number of skilled people able to make satellite imagery analysis. So probably thanks to that, it will make something that will be faster than before. And we come back to the always a matter of time, by the way. That's thanks to AI, probably the SAR imagery. And I think the next step, which is far more complicated, but still spectral imagery, will be fast, that it took the period of time that has been requested to understand what we can extract from an optical imagery and then to SAR. Now it's definitely a SAR era, and we see like many contracts worldwide to develop either a system or just to purchase more commercial imagery. I think like, for instance, hyperspectral imagery will come on the market faster than the other sources thanks to AI, because it helps a lot to understand what information you can extract from it. And then it will remain still, that's, I would say, cultural thing that needs to be still handled or managed by a human to really understand, oh, okay, you have that result, but now you have to understand how you can interpret it. And this is probably next step that is not really done by AI yet. And then market-wise, despite the budget cutoff from NGA, we really see a growing concern in Europe with growing budget as well. So something just will find kind of balance.
On that note, NGA did not report a budget cut.
It's not NGA, sorry, NRO.
NRO. And I had a conversation with our friends that wrote about it. They don't announce it. It was based on the information the contractors got from them. And that's true. It's interesting. So I didn't have the feeling the last days that NGA's budget gets cut.
I don't think so. Yeah, you're right. I was talking about NRO, but especially regarding NGA and the growing interest and the growing dynamic that you have on AI. No, I don't think that NGA will get a budget cut off or will announce that. So no, I don't think so. And by the way, that we are talking about that earlier regarding the contract they have made with the university, then with Palantir, and I think with URSA recently, that definitely demonstrates like there is still a growing interest in AI in the geospatial sector for NGA.
Security, defense, intelligence sector. How would you define the growing role of the commercial imagery versus their own satellites? They will always fly their own satellites for their own missions, especially when we're talking about our Americas. But it seems that their hunger for data is so big that they're taking everything they can get hold of.
I think there is very strong disparities worldwide. So in the US, they know that they cannot do everything by themselves as patrimonial system. And they see in the commercial imagery some very interesting complementary assets. First, because some of them can do what they are not doing yet, or they are not doing at all. Like, for instance, what we said about the global daily mapping from planet, for instance. And secondly, because also the classification that is really complicated, makes the transfer of data and some collaboration, even between different entities within the same government, really difficult. So that's why, for instance, in France, for a while, they have purchased commercial imagery from Airbus to serve the French Navy and the maritime surveillance applications, while they have already access to very exquisite data sources from their own satellites. But because of classification and declassification issues, sometimes it makes just easier to use that commercial sources and make it like really complementary of what they may have on the other side. But in the same time, in other regions, because they don't have this own asset yet, satellites represent a very interesting business line for most of the commercial operators that we have already. So that's why BlackSky completely acquired the LeoStella company to be more independent in the satellite manufacturing aspect by exporting their own platform. Exactly what Planet recently made with the SkyPath GSAT. ESA not counting anymore the number of contracts they have made worldwide to sell their own platform. Definitely represents one of the...
And they have now built a joint venture in Europe with Rheinmetall to build military SAR satellites out of Germany. But that's, I think, an interesting move. Talking about Europe, where do we stand in Europe in terms of that? We have got here the last 4 days a very American view and a good insight in where they stand. And when you compare that with Europe, there's definitely a huge gap, no doubt about it. But are we able to catch up?
To catch up what?
On capacity. And if so, how? What are the capacities you would see Europe needs most on the Earth observation side? I'm not talking about launchers.
It's a good question and without any easy response, I would say. I think some important milestone will happen soon.
That sounds magic. What important milestone will happen soon?
I mean, at European level, to make sure that we have an agreement to really cooperate, because I don't think that each country will have the budget or the capacities to be important enough or to have important enough budgets or capacities to defend itself. So that's why cooperation will be really critical in the coming months/years, hopefully, in Europe. And as part of milestone, I think the role of European Commission will be really critical. And that's why I think that next MFF in 2 years now will definitely provide really interesting output on okay, what would be the next step regarding, for instance, Earth observation, governmental service at European level? They have initiated a study last year regarding that. And that would be the output of that study. And then the next steps will be something.
One issue is money, no doubt. And usually the MFF will provide the money and the funds for that. The same with the ministerial on the ESA level. The question is, what are the most needed capabilities that we have to build up? I mean, we talked about SAR at the moment seems to be the holy grail in Earth observation. Everyone wants better, faster now. But at the end, it's a SAR image. Yeah. It has to be complemented with Earth electro-optical. It might have to be complemented with or fused with hyperspectral data to make something out of it.
Probably my response will not be the one that you expect. I don't think that will be coming from satellite capacities. I think where there is a very significant gap that we should fill first is regarding the computing capacities that we have in Europe, like sovereign computing capacity. Did you see like the supercomputer presentation that has been made in the forward? It was really interesting. Do we have that in Europe? Not really. And there's something where if we need to rely on external partners, it will bring something really complex and hard to manage in a more complex world, I would say, geopolitically speaking. And we don't have so many AI champions. So having more satellites in orbit will be, of course, something interesting. But then if we don't have the capability to process in a fast way such volume of imagery, will become complex.
It's
and more.
Interesting view.
And you mentioned like there is a budget program at national level. Yes, but at European level, I don't think so, to be honest. Because if you put together all the budget that have been spent over the 2 or 3 past years in national programs in Italy, in Greece, in Poland, to be honest, we may have like very interesting European satellite systems. So I think it's much more a matter of coordination.
I heard it before in a European context. The last point I would like to touch is, and we heard it here and there in the last days, quantum sensors. So the next big thing in Earth observation. For me, quantum is a huge mystery, I have to say. When I get quantum presentations, I can follow up the first minutes and then I'm fading out. So
I would be honest, me too.
I don't understand that. So do you have an idea what quantum sensors can bring to the party when it comes to Earth observation? We are talking about theoretical or PowerPoint slides today, but tomorrow that might be done in tests. So what does it mean?
For me, it's something that I not dig into. I don't have enough expertise, to be honest, to give you something relevant enough. For me, so at least, what would be interesting with that quantum sensors would be what we said earlier regarding the trustability and encryption capabilities. That will be also additional features to the current sensor that we may have. For me, it is not a matter of the technology that you use on board, but much more the matter of you will address the end user needs. So for Earth observation, it's always a matter of resolution for accuracy of the information that you provide, for the timing, so the freshness of that information, and your ability to provide also, I would say, the right information at the right time, at the right place. Beyond that, and at the right price as well. Beyond that, always a matter of technology. But from an end user perspective, there are the 3 main, 4 with the price, the 4 main features that you should be worried about.
Okay, let's wrap that up. If you, as observation or specialist, analyze what we have seen here over the last days, so what is your advice for Europe, for your European clients, for our European listeners, what they should be aware of and maybe speed up with asking the consultant in you?
Sure. So if we talk about clients, like private clients, I think like having a very detailed look at what the European Commission and the ESA plan for the next years is really important to guarantee the future of your company and your system, to see what would be the need and what could be brought by your company and how you could be positioned yourself, of course. And secondly, I think it's maybe smarter not trying to do or to repeat what has been done, for instance, in the US. We are a region with such interesting capacities and skills, people who are running Earth observation system for 3 decades and have such a great experience. We are innovating a lot. We have a very interesting program to do that. There are so many, even at ESA, you have so many programs to find budgets, to make R&D, to develop very cutting-edge solutions. And I think developing something that will bring very additional features, or how to say that, a better value proposition than our competitors worldwide, would make the difference from a long-term perspective. So US have been the first on the markets to get on. From the new space era, they have been the first to come into the markets. We can either do the same or we can do it in our way, making maybe more innovative and trying to find the right balance between the new space era that brought so many innovation in producing faster, cheaper, and so on, and finding the right balance between that and bringing something that is valuable enough for the client and that will be also, I would say, sustainable enough, or I would say like satellite that will be maybe providing a longer lifetime, that will be more performant as well. And finding that right balance will be definitely a key in the coming years to position themselves as cutting-edge solutions. We have many players who launched like thousands, or not thousands, but hundreds of satellites that were not providing so many good information and imagery. And then they start by improving again their satellite performances, So just to find that right balance. So conducting to a mass increase of their platform and so on. So they were not cheaper at the start, but probably they have found more clients, or they have found positioning where they were matching the client needs more than before. So it's something that we experienced from Black Sky that reduced the resolution, for instance, integrated Sphere, or it has been also the case from iSight from the first generation to the fourth. They have really improved the performances. So it's something where I really suggest to European players that the ones that are the newcomers and the ones that are just arriving on the market to think about that from the beginning.
Is there still a place for new Earth observation companies? What do you think about that?
That's an interesting question. This morning, I've seen iSight signing I don't know if it's an MOU or contract for 24 SAR constellation in Japan. So I was like, whoa, okay. It becomes like very competitive world now in the SAR domain. And I think it's complicated to find for them some differentiators.
Japan just purchased a number of planet satellites as well. Don't forget that on the Earth observation side.
Yeah, but they did not get like the supply chain or some providers doing the same as planets. While on the SAR side, they have already 2 domestic operators. Yeah, that's where I see the differences in SAR. I think they have difficulties to find now differentiators, to find each of them their niche positioning. But in optical, I have the feeling there are still some room, especially in Europe, that is highly dominated by Airbus, to be honest. And I'm not saying that because I'm French, just because it's the truth. Today, there are not so many European providers. We are still relying on some non-European providers regarding revisits, or sometimes regarding several spectral bands that will be interesting for other type of applications. And the work that has been done by ESA and European Commission regarding the CCM program by supporting new concepts, new ideas, I think will bring like very positive project in the coming years to be developed and to be more mature.
Sylvain, thank you very much for your time. We are about to board. We don't want to miss our flight. With that, a SpaceWatch out from the St. Louis airport.
Thank you very much.
And if you have further questions, reach out to us at radio@SpaceWatch.Global. If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Thorsten Kriening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.